There's a photograph. It has been sitting in a leather trunk for 50 years, wrapped in brown paper, tied with a string that no one had ever had the courage to cut. It survived a flood. It survived a fire that took half the house. It survived 3 moves, 2 wars, and the slow, silent decay of everything that time knows how to destroy. And then, on the day of the funeral, when the whole family gathered in the old house, when the aunts were crying and the uncles were arguing about who would inherit what, someone finally cut the string. The paper fell open. And the oldest woman in the room went completely silent. It was a wedding photograph. The year was 1903. The bride was young, impossibly young, barely 19, and beautiful in the way that makes people stop and stare. She wore white lace that had cost more than most families in that town earned in an entire year. Her hair was pinned up in the elegant fashion of the time, and her eyes were cast downward, modest, obedient, the way a good bride was supposed to look. Beside her stood the groom. Tall. Respectable. A man of wealth and position, dressed in a dark suit that fit him perfectly. Behind them, the painted studio backdrop showed marble pillars and a painted garden, the kind of elegance that money could buy. At first, they saw nothing strange. A perfect wedding. A perfect couple. A perfect day. But then, someone held the photograph closer to the lamp. And they saw it. On the bride's hand. Beneath the wedding ring. Pressed against it, almost hidden, almost invisible, there was another ring. An old ring. A simple ring. The kind of ring a poor man gives when he has nothing else in the world to give. And on the back of the photograph, in handwriting that had faded to the color of old tea, there was one line. Written by the bride herself. 50 years before. He thought I was holding his hand. I was holding goodbye. The family looked at each other. No one understood. No one had ever heard this story. The bride, their grandmother, their great-grandmother, had been married for over 50 years. She had been a good wife. A faithful wife. Everyone said so. But no one knew. No one knew about the ring. No one knew about the man who stood outside the studio that day. No one knew what it cost her to smile for that photograph. But I know. And now, you will know too. This is the story of Amara. And this is the story of a love that was never allowed to live, and a photograph that kept its secret for half a century. To understand what happened on that wedding day, you have to go back. Back to the year 1901. Back to the town of Lagos, where the sea met the land, where the ships came in with their strange cargo, and where the railway was being built, iron tracks cutting through the red earth like veins of a new world. Amara was 17 years old then. Her family had once been wealthy. Her father, Chief Okafor, had been one of the most respected traders in the town. His compound was large, his wives were many, his children were well fed, and his name carried weight wherever it was spoken. But trade is a cruel thing. It gives and it takes. And in the year 1900, it took everything. A shipment lost at sea. A partner who vanished with the money. Debts that grew like weeds in the rainy season. By the time Amara was 17, the compound was quiet. The wives had been sent away. The servants were gone. And the only thing the family had left was their name, and their pride. Amara was the eldest daughter. And in a family that had fallen, the eldest daughter is not a child. She is a hope. A bargaining chip. A future that must be secured at any cost. But Amara did not think about any of that. Because Amara was in love. His name was Saifo. He was a railway worker. A common laborer. A man who woke before the sun and came home after dark, his hands calloused, his back aching, his clothes smelling of dust and iron and sweat. He was not wealthy. He was not educated. He had no compound, no title, no family name that anyone respected. He was, by every measure of that time, nothing. But when Saifo smiled, the whole world seemed to lean in to listen. They met at the market. Amara had gone to buy palm oil for her mother, a small errand, an ordinary day. And there he was, standing by a stall, laughing with a friend, his voice deep and warm like the sound of a drum at dusk. She dropped her basket. He picked it up. And that was the beginning. They met in secret, of course. They had to. In a town where everyone knew everyone, a girl from a fallen but proud family could not be seen with a railway laborer. So they met where no one could see them. Behind the old baobab tree at the edge of the town, where the branches hung low like arms reaching down to hold them. By the railway tracks, where the iron sang in the heat and the dust rose like golden smoke. At the river, where the water was quiet and the birds did not tell secrets. He would bring her small gifts. Not gold, not lace, he could never afford those. But a mango, warm from the tree. A piece of cloth, dyed blue like the evening sky. A carved wooden bird, so small it fit in the palm of her hand. And once, he brought her a ring. It was not a rich man's ring. It was not gold, not silver, not anything a jeweler would have touched. It was a simple band, carved by his own hands from a piece of brass he had found at the railway yard, polished until it shone like the sun on water. "This is not much," he said, his voice low, almost ashamed. "But it is all I have. And I give it to you because you are all I want." Amara looked at the ring. She looked at his hands, rough, scarred, honest hands. And she cried. "Yes," she said. "Yes. I will wear it forever." She wore it on a string around her neck at first, hidden beneath her clothes, because she could not explain it to her mother. But at night, when the house was quiet, she would take it out and hold it to the light, and she would dream. She dreamed of a small house. A simple house, with a thatched roof and a cooking fire and a child playing in the yard. She dreamed of Saifo coming home, tired and dusty, and her hands washing his face, and his hands holding hers. She dreamed of a life that was poor, but full. And then, one evening, he asked her the question she had been waiting for. "Amara," he said, kneeling on the red earth by the river, his voice shaking like a man who had never been so afraid in his life. "I have nothing. I have no title, no money, no future that anyone would envy. But I have my hands. And I have my heart. And I swear to you, on my mother's grave, that I will work until my back breaks to give you a good life. Will you marry me?" Amara looked at him. At his honest face. At his hopeful eyes. At the man who loved her more than any wealthy man ever could. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Saifo. I will marry you." They held each other by the river that night, and the stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter, as if even heaven was celebrating. But heaven does not always get the final word. Her father found out. Of course he found out. In a town like that, secrets have wings, and gossip travels faster than the wind. It was a market woman who told him. A woman who had seen Amara and Saifo by the railway tracks, laughing together, her hand in his. By evening, the whole town knew. And by the next morning, Chief Okafor was standing in front of his daughter, his face dark as a storm cloud. "You have shamed this family," he said. His voice was low, which made it worse. "You, the eldest daughter. You, the hope of this house. You have been seen, with a railway laborer. A man who has nothing. A man who will never have anything." "He loves me, father," Amara said, her voice small. "Love?" Her father laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Love does not pay debts, Amara. Love does not feed your mother. Love does not marry off your sister. Love is a luxury for people who can afford it. We cannot." "Then let us be poor," Amara begged. "Let us be poor together. I do not care about money. I care about him." Her father's hand came down on the table so hard that the cups rattled. "You will never see him again." That night, Amara cried until she had no tears left. But the story did not end there. Because her father, her proud, desperate father, had already made other plans. There was a man in Lagos. A wealthy man. A merchant who had made his fortune trading cloth and palm oil and cocoa. A man whose name was spoken with respect in every important house in the town. His name was Mr. Adeyemi. He was not young. He was not handsome. He was 45 years old, with a belly that spoke of too much good food and a temper that spoke of too much power. His first wife had died, leaving him childless, and he was looking for a new wife. A young wife. A beautiful wife. A wife who would give him sons. He had seen Amara at church one Sunday. And he had decided. He came to Chief Okafor's house with gifts. Fine cloth. A bottle of imported wine. Money, enough money to make the chief's eyes go wide. I have heard, Mr. Adeyemi said, that your family has fallen on hard times. That is a shame. A family with your name should not suffer. I am a generous man, Chief Okafor. And I have a proposal. The proposal was simple. Mr. Adeyemi would pay off every debt the family owed. Every single one. He would restore the chief's name. He would pay for the younger sister's education, and her dowry, when the time came. He would give the family a future. In exchange, Amara would become his wife. Chief Okafor did not hesitate. Agreed, he said. She will marry you. Amara did not know about this. Not at first. She only knew that one day, her mother came to her room with tears in her eyes, and told her that there was a man, a wealthy, respectable man, who wanted to marry her. I do not want him, Amara said. I want Saifo. Saifo is gone, her mother said. And that was when the world broke. They told her that Saifo had been sent away. That her father had gone to the railway camp and told Saifo that if he ever came near Amara again, he would be arrested, beaten, thrown in prison, or worse. That Saifo had packed his things and left town that very night, without a word, without a goodbye. They told her he was gone. They told her he was never coming back. They told her, and this was the cruelest lie of all, that he had not even fought for her. That he had taken the money her father offered and left quietly, like a coward, like a man who had never loved her at all. Amara did not eat for 3 days. She did not speak for a week. She held the brass ring in her hand and stared at it until her eyes burned. She wanted to believe it was a lie. She wanted to believe Saifo would never abandon her. But he was gone. And her father was relentless. And her mother was crying. And her little sister, her sweet, innocent little sister, who was only 12 years old, looked at her with eyes that did not understand why the house was so sad. And so, Amara made her choice. She would marry Mr. Adeyemi. She would be a good wife. She would smile at the wedding. And she would bury her heart so deep that no one would ever find it again. The wedding was set for the 3rd Saturday of the month. The church was decorated. The guests were invited. The dress, white lace, imported from England, paid for by Mr. Adeyemi, hung in her room like a ghost. And the night before the wedding, Amara sat alone in her room, unable to sleep. She had not cried in weeks. She had told herself the tears were finished. She had told herself that this was her duty, her sacrifice, her cross to bear. But that night, something happened. There was a knock at the window. Amara's heart stopped. She opened the window slowly, her hands trembling, and there, standing in the shadows, his face lit by the pale moon, was a boy from the railway camp. A boy she recognized. A boy who had been Saifo's friend. He pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand. He told me to give you this, the boy whispered. He said to read it before the sun comes up. And then you must decide. And then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Amara closed the window. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unfold the paper. And she read. My Amara, I know they told you I was gone. I know they told you I did not fight for you. It is a lie. I did not take their money. I did not leave because I wanted to. They drove me out of town like a dog, and they told me that if I ever came back, they would destroy me, and worse, they would destroy you. So I left. Not because I stopped loving you. Because I was afraid of what they would do to you if I stayed. But I could not stay away forever. I am in this town, Amara. I am here now. I have been here for 3 days, hiding, waiting, hoping. I know about the wedding. I know about the man they have chosen for you. I know what they have promised you and what they have taken from you. And I am not here to stop it. I am not here to make a scene. I am not here to shame you in front of the whole town. I am here to give you a choice. Tomorrow, when you leave that church, I will be standing outside the studio where they will take your photograph. I will be there, Amara. I will be waiting. If you want to come to me, if you want to run, if you want to be poor with me, if you want the life we dreamed of by the river, I will be there. I will take your hand, and I will never let go. But if you do not come, if you choose your family, if you choose your duty, if you choose that life, I will understand. I will leave this town and I will never trouble you again. You will never see me. You will never hear from me. And I will carry you in my heart until the day I die. The choice is yours, my love. It was always yours. I am waiting. Saipho. Amara read the letter 3 times. Then she read it again. And then she sat on the floor of her room, in her white wedding dress that had not yet been worn, and she wept, not the quiet tears of grief, but the terrible, shaking sobs of a heart being torn in two. Because she knew what she had to do. And it was not what she wanted. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. The sun rose golden over the town. The birds sang. The church bells rang. The streets were swept and the market women smiled and the whole town came out to see the wealthy Mr. Adeyemi marry the beautiful Amara. She looked like a dream. Her dress was white lace, fitted at the waist, flowing to the floor. Her veil was long and delicate, like mist. Her shoes were new, her gloves were new, everything was new, everything except her heart, which was old and broken and heavy as stone. But no one could see that. Everyone saw a beautiful bride. Everyone saw a lucky girl. Everyone saw a perfect day. Inside her glove, hidden where no one would ever look, she wore the brass ring. She had not been able to leave it behind. It was the only thing she had left of him. It was the only proof that her love had ever been real. And so, beneath the fine wedding ring that Mr. Adeyemi had placed on her finger, she wore Saipho's ring, hidden, secret, pressed against her skin like a prayer. The ceremony was short. The vows were spoken. The guests clapped. The women ululated. The men shook Mr. Adeyemi's hand and congratulated him on his beautiful young wife. And Amara smiled. She smiled through the ceremony. She smiled through the congratulations. She smiled through the feast, through the dancing, through the speeches that praised her beauty and her virtue and her good fortune. She smiled until her face ached. And then came the photograph. The studio was on the main road, a small building with a painted sign and a big camera on wooden legs, the kind that made you stand very still and hold your breath. The photographer was an old man with white hair and steady hands. He arranged them carefully, the groom standing tall, the bride seated, her hands folded in her lap. "Hold your hands like this," he said, gently adjusting her fingers. "The ring must show. It is important. The ring is the symbol of the marriage." Amara looked down at her hands. The wedding ring gleamed on her finger. And beneath it, hidden, but there, was the brass ring. She thought of the letter. She thought of Saipho, standing somewhere outside, waiting. She thought of the choice he had given her. "If you want to come to me, I will be there." She could stand up. She could walk out. She could run. The photographer raised his hand. "Smile," he said. "Everyone, smile." And Amara, the bride, the daughter, the sister, the sacrifice, smiled. The camera flashed. And in that single moment, frozen forever in silver and light, the brass ring was captured on her hand. Small. Hidden. Almost invisible. But there. The photograph was taken. The photograph was perfect. The photograph was framed and hung in the parlor, where everyone who visited would see it and say, "What a beautiful couple, what a perfect wedding." No one ever saw the ring. No one ever knew. But Saifo saw her. He was there, just as he had promised. He stood across the road from the studio, in the shadow of a tree, his heart in his throat, watching. He watched the guests go in. He watched the photographer close the door. He watched the minutes crawl by like hours. And then he saw her. She came out of the studio on her husband's arm, her veil lifted, her face turned away from the road. She did not look at him. She did not turn her head. She walked to the carriage, and she climbed in, and she did not look back. Saifo stood there for a long time. The carriage drove away. The dust settled. And Saifo, the railway man, the man who had loved her with everything he had, turned, and walked out of the town, and never came back. He did not know that she had seen him. He did not know that she had felt his eyes on her like a hand on her heart. He did not know that, in that moment, as she climbed into the carriage, she had whispered the only words she could not say aloud. "I see you. I love you. I am sorry." He did not know that she was not holding her husband's hand in that photograph. She was holding goodbye. The years passed. They always do. Amara became Mrs. Adeyemi. She ran a fine household. She bore her husband 3 sons and 2 daughters. She was respected in the town, admired for her grace, her patience, her quiet strength. Mr. Adeyemi's debts were paid. The family name was restored. Her father died in peace, knowing his children were secure. Her little sister, the one whose future had cost so much, grew up, was educated, married well, and had children of her own. Amara watched it all. And she told herself, every single day, that it was worth it. It was worth it. My sister is happy. My family is safe. My children are fed. This is what I chose. This is what I paid for. But at night, when the house was quiet and her husband was asleep, she would take out the brass ring, hidden in a small wooden box beneath her bed, and she would hold it to her heart. And she would remember. The river. The baobab tree. The railway tracks singing in the heat. The mangoes, warm from the tree. The carved wooden bird. The smile that made the world lean in to listen. She never heard from Saifo again. She did not know where he went. She did not know if he was alive or dead. She only knew that he had kept his promise, he had left, and he had never troubled her. Sometimes, she wondered if he had married. Sometimes, she hoped he had found happiness. Sometimes, she prayed that he had forgiven her. And sometimes, only sometimes, when the loneliness was too heavy to bear, she allowed herself to wonder what her life would have been if she had run. If she had walked out of that studio. If she had taken his hand. But she never let herself wonder for long. Because wondering was a door that led to a pain she could not afford. And so she lived. She lived a good life. A dutiful life. A life that everyone around her called happy. And the photograph sat in the parlor, on the wall, in its golden frame, the beautiful bride, the respectable groom, the perfect wedding. And the ring. The ring that no one ever saw. 50 years passed. Mr. Adeyemi grew old. His health failed. And one winter evening, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, he died peacefully in his sleep. He was buried with honor. The whole town came to mourn. They spoke of his wealth, his generosity, his many accomplishments. Amara, now an old woman with silver hair and tired eyes, stood at the graveside and wept. Not for love. She had never loved him. But she had respected him, and she had kept her promise to him, and she had given him sons. That was something. After the funeral, the family gathered in the old house to sort through his belongings. His clothes. His papers. his accounts, his private things. And in the back of his wardrobe, in a leather trunk that no one had opened in years, they found it. A sealed envelope. There was no name on it. No address. No writing at all, except for one word, in Mr. Adeyemi's careful hand. Amara. The family brought it to her. The old woman, the grandmother, the widow. Mother, her eldest son said, "We found this. It was in father's trunk. It has your name on it." Amara took the envelope. Her hands were old now, wrinkled, trembling. She looked at it for a long time. And then she opened it. Inside was a photograph. The wedding photograph. The one from the studio. The one that had hung in the parlor for 50 years. But no, this was not the framed one. This was the original. The untouched print, kept safe in the dark for half a century. And on the back of the photograph, in handwriting that had faded to the color of old tea, there was a line. Written by Amara herself. 50 years ago. He thought I was holding his hand. I was holding goodbye. The family gathered around. They looked at the photograph. They looked at the words. They did not understand. Mother, her daughter whispered, "What does this mean?" And Amara, the old woman, the widow, the grandmother, looked at the photograph for a long, long time. Then she looked at her children. And she told them the story. She told them about the river. About the baobab tree. About the railway tracks and the mangoes and the carved wooden bird. She told them about Saifo. The railway man. The man she had loved with all her heart. She told them about the letter. The letter that came the night before her wedding. The letter that gave her a choice. She told them about the man standing outside the studio, waiting for her. And she told them why she did not go to him. "Your aunt," she said, her voice cracking with 50 years of held-back tears. "Your aunt, my little sister, her whole future depended on that marriage. Your grandfather's debts. The family's name. Everything. The man I married promised to pay it all, but only if I became his wife." She paused. "I loved Saifo," she said. "I loved him more than I have ever loved anyone. But I could not let my sister starve. I could not let my mother beg. I could not let my family be destroyed. So I stayed." Her children were silent. "He was standing right there," Amara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Right outside that studio. Waiting. And I walked past him. I got into that carriage. And I never saw him again." She looked down at the photograph in her hands. "In that picture," she said, "I am not holding my husband's hand. I am holding the hand of the man I could not have. I am holding the life I gave away. I am holding goodbye." There was a long silence in the room. The family looked at the photograph again. And this time, they saw it. There, on the bride's hand, beneath the wedding ring, pressed against it, almost hidden, was another ring. An old ring. A simple ring. A brass ring, carved by hand, polished until it shone. "The ring," her granddaughter whispered. "There's another ring." Amara smiled. It was a sad smile, the smile of a woman who had carried a secret for 50 years and was finally setting it down. "Yes," she said. "He gave it to me by the river. He carved it himself. From a piece of brass he found at the railway yard. He said it was all he had. He said I was all he wanted." She reached into her pocket. And she pulled out a small wooden box. She opened it. And there, inside, wrapped in a piece of blue cloth, was the brass ring. The same ring. The one from the photograph. The one she had worn beneath her wedding ring on the day she married another man. She had kept it for 50 years. "After your father died," she said softly, "I thought about writing to him. I thought about finding him. But I did not know if he was alive. I did not know if he had forgiven me. I did not know if he had found someone else. And I was afraid, afraid that if I found him, and he had forgotten me, it would break what little was left of my heart. So I kept it here, she said. In this box. Where no one could find it. Where it could not hurt anyone. Her granddaughter knelt beside her. Grandmother, she said, do you think he ever knew? Do you think he knew you still loved him? Amara looked at the photograph. At the ring. At the words she had written 50 years ago. I do not know, she said. But I hope. I hope that somewhere, somehow, he knew. I hope that when he walked away from that studio, he knew that I was not choosing another man. I was choosing my family. I was choosing sacrifice. I was choosing love, in the only way I was allowed to have it. The family never found out what happened to Saifo. They searched. They asked. They wrote letters to the railway offices, to the towns along the tracks, to anyone who might have known him. But the railway man had vanished. Like smoke. Like a secret. Like a love that was never allowed to live. The photograph was kept, of course. It hangs in the family home to this day, the beautiful bride, the respectable groom, the perfect wedding. But now, when the family looks at it, they do not see a perfect wedding. They see a young woman, holding her breath. They see a ring beneath a ring. They see a love that was sacrificed, not because it was weak, but because it was strong enough to let go. And on the back of that photograph, in handwriting that has faded to the color of old tea, there is one line. Written by Amara. 50 years ago. He thought I was holding his hand. I was holding goodbye. And now, I have to ask you something. Amara had a choice. She could have walked out of that studio. She could have run to the man she loved. She could have chosen love over duty, passion over sacrifice. But she did not. She chose her family. She chose her sister's future. She chose to break her own heart so that others could be whole. So tell me, in the comments, was Amara right? Was her sacrifice noble, a mother's love, a sister's love, a daughter's love, paid in the currency of her own broken heart? Or was it a tragedy, a life spent with the wrong man, a love buried alive, a choice that she should never have been forced to make? And if it were you standing in that studio, with the man you love waiting outside and your family's future hanging in the balance, what would you have done? Would you have run? Or would you have stayed? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone you love. Because some loves are loud. And some loves are quiet. And some loves, like Amara's, are written in invisible ink, on the back of a photograph, waiting 50 years for someone to finally read them. He thought I was holding his hand. I was holding goodbye.